Hello, my dear friends, and take a slow, gentle breath. Let your shoulders relax. Let the noise of the day slowly fade away. Tonight, we will travel back in time, not to a palace or a castle, but to a small, dark workshop filled with heat, smoke, and the sound of metal being struck again and again. Tonight, we will explore why life was much harder than it looks for one of the most important workers of the medieval world. This is the quiet story of why it truly sucked to be a medieval blacksmith. Imagine you are waking up before sunrise in a small medieval town. The air is cold and still, but you already know what the day will bring. Long hours, heavy work, intense heat. There is no choice to rest longer. People depend on you. Farmers need tools, soldiers need weapons, horses need shoes, doors need hinges. Every part of daily life depends on your hands. Because of this, your work never truly ends. As you walk toward your forge, the smell of smoke and burned coal fills the air. The workshop is small and dark, built from stone and wood, with very little space to move freely. The fire must be lit early and kept burning all day. Once the forge is hot, there is no turning back. The heat grows stronger with each passing hour, pressing against your skin, making it hard to breathe comfortably. Sweat forms quickly, even in winter. In summer, the heat becomes unbearable. The work itself is slow and punishing. You lift heavy pieces of metal again and again. Your arms ache, your hands grow rough and cracked, and your back carries constant pain. The hammer rises and falls thousands of times a day. The sound is loud and constant, echoing through your head. There is no silence here, only metal striking metal, sparks flying and fire roaring. This noise follows you even after the day ends, ringing softly in your ears when you try to rest. There is no such thing as an easy task. Even small items require time, strength, and careful attention. A single mistake can ruin hours of work. Metal cools quickly, forcing you to move fast, yet carefully. Burns are common. Small cuts are normal. Blisters break and form again. There is no modern protection, no safety gear. Injuries are part of daily life, accepted without complaint because stopping means falling behind. As the day stretches on, people come and go asking for more. Repairs, adjustments, new orders. Everyone needs something, and everyone needs it soon. Payment is often small and delayed. Some cannot pay at all. Still, the work must be done. The blacksmith is respected but rarely rewarded with comfort. You are needed, but you are never finished. When evening finally arrives, your body feels heavy and worn. Your arms tremble slightly. Your clothes smell of smoke and sweat. There is little energy left for anything else. Rest is short, because tomorrow will begin the same way. Another early morning, another long day beside the fire. As the night grows quiet, let us pause here. Imagine stepping away from the heat for a moment. Feel the cool air. Feel your body slowly settling. In the next part, we will gently explore what daily life outside the forge looked like, including food, sleep, and why the blacksmith's body aged so quickly. For now, remain still. Let the quiet deepen. Let rest continue in its own time. Imagine you are waking up before the sun, while the village is still quiet and the air is cool. This is the calmest moment of your day, because once the forge is lit, the heat will not leave you for many long hours. Being a medieval blacksmith meant living beside fire almost every day of your life. The forge was not a gentle warmth. It was a heavy, constant heat that filled the small workspace and wrapped itself around your body. As soon as the fire was burning, sweat began to form, even in winter. There was no escape from this heat, only short pauses when the bellows rested for a moment. The workday was long and repetitive. Metal had to be heated again and again, pulled from the fire, struck carefully, then returned to the flames. This rhythm never really changed. The sound of hammer on metal filled the air for hours, steady and loud, echoing inside the blacksmith's head. Over time, this noise became tiring in a deep, quiet way. It followed you even when the work stopped, making true rest difficult. Silence felt strange after so many years of constant sound. Every task required strength and focus. There was little room for mistakes. Metal cooled quickly, and if it was not shaped at the right moment, the process had to start again. This meant lifting heavy tools again and again, striking with force, and holding awkward positions for long periods. Arms, shoulders, and hands grew strong, but also stiff and painful. Small aches were ignored because stopping meant falling behind. Over time, these aches became part of daily life, something the blacksmith simply learned to carry. Food and rest were often rushed. Meals were eaten quickly between tasks, sometimes while still standing near the forge. There was no long break to cool down or relax. Even when the fire was low, the heat lingered in the walls and in the body. At night, sleep came slowly, as muscles continued to throb and the warmth seemed to stay trapped inside the skin. Rest never felt complete, only just enough to begin again the next day. As the years passed, the body aged faster than it should have. Hands grew rough and scarred. Breathing became heavier from long hours near smoke and ash. The heat that once felt manageable slowly became exhausting. Yet the work could not stop. Tools, horseshoes, nails, and repairs were always needed. The village depended on the blacksmith, and that dependence meant constant pressure to keep going, even when the body wanted to rest. As you imagine this endless cycle of heat and effort, notice how tiring it feels without any drama. This is another reason why it truly sucked to be a medieval blacksmith. Not because of one bad day, but because every day was shaped by fire, noise, and long hours that never really changed. As the night grows quiet again, allow this image to fade gently. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing slow. In the next part, we will drift into how this hard work affected health, family life, and the small moments of rest that were never quite enough. Over time, the life of a medieval blacksmith slowly carved itself into the body. This work was not something the body ever became fully used to. Every day demanded strength, focus, and endurance, and every day took something in return. From the moment the forge was lit in the morning, heat filled the space and stayed there. The air became heavy, thick with smoke and metal dust. Breathing felt harder, slower, and less clean. Even standing still required effort, as the body adjusted to the constant warmth pressing against the skin. There was no escape from this environment. The forge was the center of work, and work filled nearly every waking hour. The arms carried most of the burden. Repeated hammering shaped not only iron but muscle and bone. The motion was constant, steady, and unforgiving. There was little variation, little rest. Over years, joints stiffened, fingers swelled, and grip weakened. Small pains were ignored at first, because stopping was not an option. Orders still needed to be filled. Tools still needed repair. Weapons, nails, horseshoes, and hinges were always needed. Pain became part of the rhythm of work, present, but rarely acknowledged. The back and shoulders carried their own quiet suffering. Lifting heavy metal, leaning forward over the anvil and standing for long hours, wore the body down slowly. Posture bent forward over time, not from age alone, but from years of work that demanded constant downward force. The spine adapted, stiffening and aching, making rest less restful. Even at night, the body struggled to fully relax, holding on to the tension of the day. Heat left its mark as well. Burns were common even for experienced hands. Small sparks landed on skin. Hot metal brushed against arms. These injuries were often minor but frequent. Over time, skin toughened, scarred, and darkened. Pain was accepted quietly, treated simply, and rarely given time to heal fully. There was no paid rest, no replacement worker waiting. The forge depended on the blacksmith's presence every day. The toll was not only physical but also internal. Constant exposure to smoke and metal dust slowly affected breathing. Coughs became normal. Shortness of breath appeared earlier in life than expected. The body aged faster than others in the village, not because of poor habits, but because of relentless labor. Strength faded sooner. Endurance shortened. Recovery took longer. Despite all this, the blacksmith still had to remain precise. A single mistake could ruin hours of work. Iron had to be shaped at the right temperature, struck at the right angle, cooled at the right moment. Fatigue made this harder. Tired hands shook slightly. Focus slipped. This created pressure to stay alert even when the body begged for rest. The mind stayed engaged while the body slowly wore down. As you imagine this daily strain settling into years, notice how quietly exhausting it feels. There is no sudden collapse, no dramatic injury that ends the work. Instead, there is a slow wearing away. This is another reason why it truly sucked to be a medieval blacksmith. The work demanded everything the body had, and then quietly asked for more, day after day, year after year. As the night grows calm again, allow this image to soften and fade. You do not need to hold it. Let your shoulders relax. Let your breathing slow. Allow rest to continue gently, without effort. As the days turned into years, the work of a medieval blacksmith left deep marks on the body, even if those marks were not always visible at first. Every morning began with stiffness. Arms felt heavy before the hammer was even lifted. Hands ached before the fire was lit. The body learned to move through pain quietly, because pain was simply part of the job. There was no option to slow down or take long breaks. Work needed to be done, orders needed to be filled, and the village depended on the forge. Rest was brief and often incomplete, leaving the body only partly recovered before the next long day began. The heat of the forge was relentless. Standing close to fire hour after hour drained strength steadily. Sweat soaked clothing even in cold weather, and dehydration was common. The air inside the forge was thick, filled with smoke, ash, and the sharp smell of heated metal. Breathing this air every day made lungs feel heavy over time. Coughing became normal. Fatigue settled deep into the chest. The body adapted, but the cost was slow and constant wear. Hands were especially affected. fingers grew thick and stiff from repeated impact and heat. Burns were common, sometimes small, sometimes more serious. Cuts and blisters appeared often and healed slowly. There was no protective gear like today, only experience and caution. Even so, mistakes happened easily when tired. Each small injury added up, making hands less flexible with age. Even though the work never became easier, sleep did not fully restore what the day took away. At night, the body lay down exhausted, but the muscles often stayed tense. The ringing sound of hammer on metal lingered in the ears. The heat of the forge felt as if it still surrounded the body. Dreams were shallow and waking came early. Morning arrived too soon, bringing another long day of physical effort. As years passed, aging came faster than expected. A blacksmith in middle age often felt much older than others in the village. Backs bent, shoulders tightened, knees weakened from standing on hard ground all day. There was pride in strength, but strength faded quietly. When it did, fear followed. A weaker body meant slower work, and slower work meant fewer orders and less income. As you imagine this tired body settling into the night, notice how heavy it feels without drama. This is another reason why it truly sucked to be a medieval blacksmith. Not because of one hard day, but because every day asked more than the body could easily give. As the night grows quiet again, allow this image to soften and fade. You do not need to hold on to it. Let your breathing slow. Let your muscles relax. Allow rest to continue gently, without effort. As the days turned into years, the greatest enemy of a medieval blacksmith was not a single injury or a single hard season, but the constant environment in which they lived and worked. The forge was always hot, always smoky, and always demanding. From early morning until late evening, the blacksmith stood close to fire, breathing thick air filled with ash and metal dust. There was no escape from the heat. Even in winter, when the world outside felt cold and quiet, the forge burned hot and heavy. Sweat-soaked clothing again and again, and the body never fully cooled down. This constant exposure slowly drained strength, leaving behind a deep, ongoing tiredness that sleep could not easily remove. The smoke from the forge followed the blacksmith everywhere. It settled into hair, skin, and lungs. Breathing was never fully easy. Coughing became normal. The air inside the workshop was thick and harsh, especially on still days when smoke lingered instead of drifting away. Over time, this damaged the body quietly. The blacksmith might not notice the change at first, but years of breathing heavy smoke made the chest feel tight and the breath shorter. There was no treatment for this, no rest from the air. It was simply part of the job, accepted as unavoidable. Sleep did not bring full relief. After a long day at the forge, the body was exhausted, but it was also tense. Arms ached. Hands throbbed. The back felt stiff and heavy. Even lying down, the body struggled to fully relax. Heat lingered in the muscles, and pain followed into the night. Sleep came, but it was often shallow. The body rested just enough to stand up again the next day, but not enough to feel renewed. Over time, this created a cycle of constant fatigue, where true rest was something the blacksmith rarely experienced. The skin itself carried the marks of the work. Burns were common, both small and large. Sparks flew easily, and even experienced hands could not avoid them all. Fingers, arms, and faces bore scars that never fully faded. These marks were not seen as unusual. They were expected, Pain became something to work through rather than something to stop for. This hardened the body, but it also wore it down piece by piece. As years passed, the blacksmith's body aged faster than most. Strength faded earlier, flexibility disappeared, joints stiffened from constant strain and repetitive motion. The work demanded the same movements again and again, hour after hour, day after day. There was no variation, no break. This repetition slowly damaged the body in ways that could not be reversed. When the body finally protested, there was little choice but to keep going. Stopping meant no income. No work meant no food. As you imagine this life now, notice how heavy it feels without being dramatic. There is no single moment of collapse. Just heat, smoke, pain, and fatigue, layered quietly over time. This is another reason why it truly sucked to be a medieval blacksmith. The work did not just take effort, it slowly took the body itself. As the night grows quiet, allow this image to soften and fade. You do not need to carry it further. Let your breathing slow. Let your body rest where it is. In the next part, we will move gently into how this hard life affected family, home, and the small moments outside the forge. For now, remain still. Let rest continue in its own calm way. As the years passed, the medieval blacksmith's life settled into a rhythm that rarely changed. Every day looked much like the one before it. The same walk to the forge, the same heavy doors opening, the same smell of smoke, hot metal, and ash filling the air. This routine brought a strange kind of stability, but it also brought deep exhaustion. There was little variety, little rest, and very little escape from the work. Even on days when no customers arrived, the forge still needed attention. Fires had to be managed, tools maintained, and preparations made for the next demand. The body slowly adapted to the heat and strain, but adaptation came at a cost. Muscles grew strong but stiff. Hands became rough and cracked, marked by burns and scars that never fully healed. The sound of hammer on metal echoed not just in the workshop, but inside the blacksmith's mind, following them even into moments of quiet. Sleep often came late and lightly, disturbed by aching arms and the memory of long hours spent standing. Despite being essential to the community, the blacksmith rarely enjoyed true comfort. Payment was often uneven. Some customers paid well, others paid late, and many paid in goods rather than coin. Food, clothing, or favors replaced money, creating a life that felt always balanced on uncertainty. Saving for the future was difficult, and planning ahead felt risky. Life stayed focused on the present day, the present task, the present need. Social life was limited by exhaustion. After long days at the forge, there was little energy left for conversation or gatherings. While others rested in the evening, the blacksmith's body was still cooling down from the heat of the fire. The smell of smoke clung to clothing and hair, creating distance even in shared spaces. Over time, this separation grew quietly, making the blacksmith feel both needed and apart at the same time. The forge itself became both a place of identity and a cage. Leaving it meant losing status and livelihood, but staying meant accepting the toll it took on the body and mind. Few blacksmiths ever changed professions. Skills learned at the anvil did not easily translate elsewhere. This lack of choice added weight to each passing year, making the future feel fixed and narrow. As you imagine this life of endless routine and heat, Notice how calm but heavy it feels. There is no sudden tragedy here, only slow wearing down. This is another reason why it truly sucked to be a medieval blacksmith. The work shaped the entire life, leaving little space for rest, change, or ease. As the night grows quiet, let this image soften and fade. You do not need to hold on to it. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing slow naturally. Allow rest to continue gently, in its own time. As the years passed, the life of a medieval blacksmith left deep marks on the body. Marks that were not dramatic or sudden, but slow and unavoidable. From morning until night, the blacksmith stood close to heat, lifting heavy tools, striking iron again and again with steady force. This daily motion shaped the body in uneven ways. Arms grew strong but stiff. Hands became rough and scarred. Fingers lost softness and sometimes feeling. The back carried constant strain, bending and straightening in the same motion thousands of times. Rest did not fully remove this weight. Each new day began with the body already tired. The heat of the forge followed the blacksmith everywhere. Even in colder seasons, the work demanded standing close to fire for long hours. Sweat soaked clothing. Breathing felt heavy and dry. Smoke and dust filled the air, settling into the lungs slowly over time. Coughing was common. Chest pain was ignored. There was no real understanding of long-term health, only the need to keep working. Stopping meant no income. Slowing down meant fewer tools made, fewer repairs finished, and fewer coins earned. Small injuries were part of daily life. Burns from hot metal, cuts from sharp edges, bruises from missed strikes. These wounds were treated simply, if at all. Cold water, cloth, or rest were often the only options. Infection was a constant risk, but fear of losing work was greater than fear of pain. Many blacksmiths worked through injuries, allowing them to heal poorly or not at all. Over time, these small wounds added up, leaving hands twisted, joints swollen, and movement limited. As age arrived, the work did not become easier. There was no lighter role waiting, no quiet position to move into. Experience brought skill, but skill did not remove the physical demand. Even older blacksmiths were expected to lift, strike, and stand as before. The forge did not adjust to age. The hammer did not grow lighter. The iron did not soften for tired hands. Each year made the same work harder, slower, and more painful. Sleep offered limited relief. Muscles ached through the night. Hands throbbed quietly. The body never fully relaxed, even in rest. Waking up meant returning to the same heat, the same noise, and the same strain. There was little choice. The blacksmith's work was essential to the community, but that importance did not come with protection or comfort. It came with expectation. As you imagine this body shaped by years of fire and labor, notice how quiet and heavy it feels. There is no dramatic collapse, only steady wear. This is another reason why it truly sucked to be a medieval blacksmith. The cost was paid slowly, through the body itself, day after day, year after year, year after. As the night grows quieter now, allow this image to soften and fade. You do not need to hold on to it. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing slow. Allow rest to continue gently, in its own time. As the years passed, the work of a medieval blacksmith began to show clearly on the body. This was not work that allowed gentle aging. It was work that wore a person down slowly and constantly. Day after day, the blacksmith stood close to intense heat, lifting heavy metal, striking it again and again with force. Arms grew strong early in life, but that strength came with a cost. Joints stiffened, shoulders ached, hands became rough, cracked, and swollen. Small injuries never fully healed because there was no time to rest long enough. Pain became familiar, something expected rather than questioned. The heat of the forge was relentless. Even in winter, sweat soaked clothing while the air burned the skin and lungs. Breathing in smoke and metal dust was part of the job, and over time it made breathing harder. Coughs lingered. Chest pain was ignored. There was no understanding of long-term damage, only the need to keep working. The body adapted just enough to continue, but never enough to feel comfortable. Exhaustion settled deep into the muscles and stayed there. Hands, the most important tools of the blacksmith, suffered the most. Burns were common, cuts unavoidable. Fingers grew thick and stiff. Fine movement became harder with age. When the hands began to fail, fear quietly grew. Without strong hands, there was no work. Without work, there was no food. This fear pushed blacksmiths to work through pain long after their bodies asked them to stop. There was no concept of retirement. A blacksmith worked until the body simply could not continue. Even then, many tried to assist younger workers, staying close to the forge as long as possible. The workshop was not just a place of labor, but the center of life. Leaving it meant losing purpose as well as income. This made aging feel frightening rather than peaceful. As you imagine this slow physical decline, notice how quiet it is. There is no sudden collapse, no dramatic end. Just a body gradually giving less each year, while the work demands the same effort as always. This is another reason why it truly sucked to be a medieval blacksmith. The work did not adapt to the worker. The worker had to adapt until there was nothing left to give. As the night grows quiet again, allow this image to soften and fade. You do not need to hold on to it. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing stay slow and gentle. Allow rest to continue calmly, without effort. As the years passed inside the blacksmith's forge, one thing never changed. There was no escape from the noise and the heat. From early morning until late evening, the sound of hammer striking metal filled the air again and again, day after day, year after year. It was a sharp, repeating sound that never truly faded, even when the work stopped. Many blacksmiths carried this noise with them into the night, hearing it in their thoughts as they tried to rest. Silence became unfamiliar. Even at home, the ears stayed alert as if waiting for the next strike. The heat was just as relentless. The forge fire burned hot in every season. In summer, the air inside the workshop became heavy and suffocating. Sweat soaked clothes quickly, and breathing felt thick and slow. In winter, the fire brought warmth, but also danger, as tired hands worked close to flames while the rest of the body remained cold. Burns were common, not dramatic injuries, but small ones that happened so often they were almost ignored. Over time, scars covered arms and hands, each one a quiet reminder of years spent too close to fire. This environment shaped the body in harsh ways. Skin grew thick and rough. Hands hardened until they lost much of their feeling. Fingers became stiff and swollen, especially in cold weather. The body adapted to survive the work, but comfort disappeared in the process. Simple pleasures like touching soft fabric or feeling cool water became less noticeable. Life narrowed to what was necessary to keep working. The forge also shaped the mind. Constant noise, constant effort, and constant heat left little space for thought. There was no quiet time to reflect or rest during the day. The mind focused on rhythm and repetition. Hammer, turn, hammer, turn. This routine kept the work going, but it also flattened emotional life. Joy became rare. Calm became rare. Everything was shaped by endurance rather than enjoyment. As blacksmiths aged, the forge became less forgiving. Younger bodies could handle long hours and intense heat. Older bodies could not. Reaction slowed slightly. Strength weakened. Small mistakes became more dangerous. A slip of the hand could mean a deep burn or broken finger. Fear slowly crept in, not loud fear, but a quiet awareness that the work was becoming harder to survive. And yet stopping was rarely an option. The blacksmith's identity was tied to the forge. Without it, there was no income, no respect, and no clear role in the community. So the work continued, even as the body protested. Pain was ignored. Fatigue was accepted. Rest was postponed again and again. As you imagine this life, notice how exhausting it feels without needing excitement or drama. This is another reason why it truly sucked to be a medieval blacksmith. Not because of one great hardship, but because of endless small ones that never stopped. As the night grows quiet now, allow the sound of the hammer to fade away. Let the heat soften. Let your body remain still and relaxed. Let your breathing slow naturally. In the next part, we will move gently toward how this life ended for many blacksmiths, and what little rest they were finally allowed. For now, remain still. Let the quiet deepen. Let rest continue in its own time. As the years passed, the body of a medieval blacksmith slowly began to show the cost of a lifetime spent beside fire and iron. This did not happen suddenly. There was no single moment when strength disappeared. Instead, it faded quietly, day by day, hammer strike by hammer strike. Muscles that were once powerful became stiff and slow. Hands that once moved with confidence began to ache even before work started. Fingers stayed swollen. Joints refused to bend easily in the cold mornings. The body carried pain the same way it carried breath, constantly and without pause. Every day still began early. The forge did not care about age or exhaustion. Fire still needed to be lit. Metal still needed to be shaped. Customers still arrived with the same expectations. The blacksmith could not slow down easily, because slowing down meant earning less, and earning less meant hunger. Rest was not a reward that came with age. It was a luxury few could afford. Even when the body begged for stillness, work continued, because stopping was never a real option. Injuries became more dangerous as time went on. A small burn that once healed quickly now stayed sore for weeks. Cuts became infected more easily. Smoke filled lungs that were already tired from years of breathing ash and dust. Coughing became common. Breathing felt heavier, especially at night, when the body finally lay down and felt everything it had ignored during the day. Sleep did not heal much anymore. It only allowed the body to survive enough to return to the forge again. Pain also changed the mind. Constant discomfort made patience thinner. Sounds felt sharper. Heat felt heavier. The ringing of metal against metal stayed in the ears long after the hammer was set down. Silence, when it finally came, felt strange rather than peaceful. The mind stayed alert. used to noise, danger, and movement. True rest became difficult not because of worry, but because the body had forgotten how to fully relax. As strength faded, fear quietly grew. A young blacksmith could work faster, lift heavier metal, and recover overnight. An aging blacksmith had to think carefully about every movement. One wrong step, one bad fall, one serious burn could end the ability to work forever. And without work, there was nothing to fall back on. No savings, no protection, no system to care for the injured. This fear lived quietly in the background of every day, making even routine tasks feel heavier. Apprentices sometimes helped, but they could not replace the blacksmith completely. The responsibility always remained. Teaching took energy. Watching others work required focus. Even when help was present, the pressure never fully lifted. The forge depended on one person more than anyone else, and that weight stayed heavy on aging shoulders. As you imagine this stage of life, notice how tired it feels without being dramatic. There is no sudden collapse, just endurance stretched beyond comfort. This is another deep reason why it truly sucked to be a medieval blacksmith. The work did not stop when the body weakened. The fire did not grow gentler with age. Life demanded the same effort, even when the body could no longer give it easily. As the night grows quiet now, allow this image to soften and fade. You do not need to hold on to the heat, the noise, or the weight. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing slow naturally. Allow rest to continue calmly, without effort, without demand. As the years passed, the forge that once felt familiar slowly became a place of quiet struggle. A medieval blacksmith did not grow old gently. Every year spent beside the fire left its mark on the body. Hands that once moved with strength and confidence became stiff and swollen. Fingers bent slowly out of shape, joints aching even before the hammer was lifted. The heat that once felt manageable now drained energy faster, making long days feel endless. The body remembered every strike, every burn, every long hour standing on hard ground. Unlike nobles or scholars, a blacksmith could not slow down with age. Work was physical, and physical strength faded quietly but steadily. There were no pensions, no savings, and no guarantee that someone else would take over the work. Even when sons or apprentices existed, the blacksmith still had to prove usefulness. Rest felt risky. Slowing down meant earning less. Earning less meant hunger, debt, or dependence on others. This fear kept many working long past the point of comfort or safety. Pain became part of daily life. Burns healed slowly. Cuts reopened. Smoke continued to fill the lungs, making breathing heavier with each passing year. Many older blacksmiths coughed often, their voices rough and tired. Sleep was shallow, disturbed by pain and stiffness. Mornings did not bring relief. They only marked the beginning of another long day at the forge. The respect given to a blacksmith did not always protect them. Villagers needed their tools, but admiration rarely turned into care. When work slowed or mistakes happened, patience was thin. Broken tools or delayed orders caused frustration. The blacksmith felt pressure not only from the fire, but from the expectations of the entire community. Aging made this pressure heavier, not lighter. Emotionally, growing old brought quiet worry. What would happen when the hammer finally felt too heavy to lift? What if illness came suddenly? There was no safety net, no clear ending. Life did not slow into comfort. It narrowed into endurance. Many older blacksmiths worked until their bodies simply could not continue, and even then stopping felt dangerous. As you imagine this stage of life, notice how quiet it is. There is no dramatic collapse, just steady wear. This is another reason why it truly sucked to be a medieval blacksmith. The job did not only take strength, it took time, health, and peace, little by little, until very little was left. As the night grows calm again, allow this image to soften and fade. You do not need to hold on to it. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing slow naturally. Allow rest to continue gently, in its own time. As the years passed, the blacksmith's body quietly carried the full weight of this life, often giving more than it could safely afford. Day after day, the same movements were repeated without rest. Lifting heavy iron, swinging the hammer, bending close to the fire, and standing for long hours slowly reshaped the body. Arms grew strong, but joints grew stiff. Hands became thick and rough, scarred by burns and small cuts that never fully healed. The body adapted to the work, but it also paid a price that could not be ignored. Heat was a constant companion, and the body struggled to escape it. Even in winter, the forge stayed hot and sweat soaked into clothing and skin. Dehydration was common, though rarely spoken about. Water breaks were short, and work resumed quickly. Over time, this constant heat drained energy and weakened the body from within. The blacksmith learned to work while tired, while sore, and while overheated, because stopping meant falling behind. Injuries were expected, not feared. Small burns were treated as nothing. Cuts were wrapped quickly and forgotten. Smoke irritated the eyes and lungs, making breathing heavier with each passing year. The sound of hammer on iron echoed in the ears, sometimes leaving a dull ringing that never truly went away. There was no concept of long-term damage, only the need to keep working. Pain became part of the background, something felt but rarely acknowledged. As strength slowly declined with age, the work did not become easier. The same effort was required even as the body resisted more each day. Muscles took longer to recover. Fatigue lingered into the morning. Sleep no longer refreshed the body fully. Yet the forge still demanded attention, and the village still needed tools. There was no retirement, no lighter duties waiting with age. Experience brought respect, but not relief. Illness made everything harder. Fever or sickness did not pause the work for long. If the blacksmith stopped, production stopped, and that affected everyone. This pressure often forced people back to work too soon, slowing recovery and deepening weakness. Over time, many blacksmiths grew old quickly, their bodies worn down years before their time. As you imagine this slow physical decline, notice how quiet it is. There is no sudden collapse, no dramatic ending, just a steady giving of strength until there is very little left to give. This is another reason why it truly sucked to be a medieval blacksmith. The work shaped the body, but it also slowly consumed it. As the night grows quiet once more, allow this image to soften and fade. You do not need to carry it with you. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing stay slow and gentle. Allow rest to continue calmly, without effort. As the years passed, there came a quiet moment in every medieval blacksmith's life, when the body began to speak more clearly than ever before. It was not sudden, and it was not dramatic. It arrived slowly, in small signs that were easy to ignore at first. The hammer felt heavier in the hand, The arms tired more quickly than they once had. The heat of the forge felt sharper, more draining, less familiar. Movements that had once been automatic now required effort and focus. The body was not breaking suddenly. It was wearing down piece by piece after years of strain. Pain became a constant presence rather than a temporary visitor. The back ached even before the day began. The shoulders stayed tight long after the forge fire was cold. Hands stiffened in the morning and loosened only after hours of work. Burns and cuts healed more slowly than before. The blacksmith learned to live with discomfort as a normal state, not something to fix, but something to carry. Rest helped only a little. Sleep no longer erased fatigue. Each new day began with tiredness already present. Despite this decline, work did not slow down. The village still needed tools. The farmers still needed repairs. Horses still needed shoes. There was no concept of retirement. Stopping meant losing income, respect, and usefulness. So the blacksmith continued, even as the body resisted. Each strike of the hammer demanded more energy than it once had. Each long day at the forge left deeper exhaustion behind. Pride kept the work going long after the body wanted to stop. This physical decline also affected the mind. Knowing that strength was fading created quiet fear. The forge was dangerous even for the young and strong. For an aging blacksmith, mistakes became more likely, and mistakes could mean serious injury. This awareness added tension to every movement. The hands shook slightly at times. Concentration became harder to maintain. The mind stayed alert, not out of excitement, but out of concern for safety. As you imagine this stage of life, notice how heavy it feels without being dramatic. There is no final moment, no clear ending, just a slow realization that the work will always demand more than the body can give. This is another reason why it truly sucked to be a medieval blacksmith. The job did not let go easily. It followed the body into old age, demanding effort long after strength had faded. As the night grows quiet once more, allow this image to soften and drift away. You do not need to hold on to it. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing slow naturally. Allow rest to continue gently, without effort. As the years passed, the fire that once felt like a source of purpose slowly became a reminder of how much the body had given and how little it had received in return. A medieval blacksmith often grew old faster than others in the village, not because of age alone, but because every day had taken something from the body. The heat, the smoke, the heavy lifting, and the endless repetition of striking iron slowly shaped the body into something stiff and tired. Joints ached even before the day began. Fingers no longer closed easily around tools. The back bent slightly forward, shaped by years of leaning toward the anvil. There was no gentle retirement waiting at the end of this life. A blacksmith worked as long as the body allowed. When strength faded, work did not stop immediately. It simply became slower and more painful. Each strike required more effort. Each breath felt heavier in the warm, smoky air of the forge. The fire burned the same as it always had, but the body standing beside it had changed. The blacksmith became aware of every movement, every weakness, every small tremor in the hands. Unlike nobles or landowners, there was no guarantee of comfort in old age. Savings were rare. Medical help was limited. If illness came, it often stayed. Burns healed slowly. Cuts took longer to close. Infections were common and dangerous. The same forge that once provided income now felt unforgiving. But stepping away from it meant losing the only way to survive. This created a quiet fear, not dramatic or loud, but constant. The fear of becoming unable to work. The fear of being useless. The fear of depending on others. As the blacksmith aged, younger workers might appear, learning the trade with stronger arms and quicker movements. Teaching them brought mixed feelings. There was pride in passing on knowledge, but also sadness in watching someone else take over the work that once defined your place in the world. The sound of hammer on iron continued, steady and familiar, but it no longer came from your own hands as often. This shift was not spoken about, it was simply accepted. Like everything else in medieval life, evenings became quieter. After long days, the blacksmith would sit near the fading warmth of the forge, muscles heavy, breathing slow. The body remembered every strike, every lift, every long hour spent standing on hard ground. Sleep came, but it was never deep. Pain followed into the night, settling into bones and joints. Dreams were often simple and repetitive, shaped by fire, metal, and movement. As you imagine this stage of life, notice how calm and heavy it feels. There is no dramatic ending here, only a slow continuation. This is another reason why it truly sucked to be a medieval blacksmith. The work did not stop when youth ended. It only became harder, quieter, and more exhausting. As the night grows quiet, allow this image to soften and drift away. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing slow naturally. Rest does not require effort now. It only requires stillness. By the time many medieval blacksmiths reached what others might call middle age, their bodies already carried the weight of a lifetime spent near heat, iron, and endless repetition. This work did not allow for gentle aging. Each day at the forge asked the same movements again and again, lifting heavy metal, holding tools tightly, standing for long hours on hard floors, bending close to the fire. Over time, the body adapted, but not kindly. Hands grew thick and stiff. Shoulders stayed tense even at rest. Backs ached constantly, not sharply, but in a deep, familiar way that never fully left. Rest did not remove this pain. It only made it quieter for a while. The heat of the forge shaped the body in ways that were hard to escape. Summers felt endless, with the fire adding to the warmth of the day until the air itself felt heavy. Sweat soaked through clothing, drying and returning again and again. Dehydration was common, and water was not always clean or close by. Winters brought a different discomfort. Stepping away from the forge meant sudden cold, making stiff joints tighten even more. The body moved from extreme heat to cold again and again, wearing it down slowly over years. Hands told the clearest story. Fingers lost flexibility. Grip weakened over time even as the muscles remained strong. Small injuries healed slowly, often reopening with the next day's work. Cuts and burns were treated simply, sometimes ignored entirely. There was no long recovery time. Tools still needed to be made. Orders still needed to be filled. The forge did not pause for pain. Because of this, many blacksmiths learned to work through discomfort until it became background noise. Breathing near the forge also took its toll. Smoke, dust, and metal particles filled the air. Day after day, These were inhaled without protection. Over years, breathing became heavier. Coughs lingered. Chest tightness became familiar. This was not sudden illness, but a slow narrowing of comfort. Simple tasks felt harder. Climbing steps required pauses. Still, the work continued because stopping meant losing income and purpose. Sleep offered limited relief. Even at night, the body held on to tension. Muscles remained slightly tight. Hands curled unconsciously, as if still holding tools. Dreams sometimes echoed the rhythm of hammer on anvil, steady and repetitive. Waking did not bring freshness. It brought readiness. Another day at the forge awaited, and the body learned to rise despite fatigue. As you imagine this aging process, notice how quiet it is. There is no dramatic collapse, just steady wear. This is another reason why it truly sucked to be a medieval blacksmith. The work shaped the body until it could shape it no longer. Strength remained, but comfort faded. Skill grew, but ease disappeared. As the night grows quieter now, allow this image to soften and drift away. You do not need to hold on to it. Let your own body rest without heat or strain. Let your breathing stay slow and gentle. Allow stillness to replace effort. By the time a medieval blacksmith reached later years of life, the body carried the full weight of decades spent beside fire and iron. Every joint remembered the hammer. Every muscle remembered the strain. The hands, once strong and steady, became stiff and swollen, their movements slower and less precise. Fingers did not bend easily anymore. Grip weakened. Simple tasks that once felt natural now required effort and patience. The body did not fail suddenly. It declined slowly, quietly, one small ache at a time. Years of heat had taken their toll. Skin was thickened and scarred, marked by burns both small and large. Breathing often felt heavy, shaped by years of smoke, dust, and metal fumes. The chest tightened more easily. Coughs lingered longer. Rest did not bring full recovery anymore. Even after a night of sleep, fatigue remained, settling deep in the bones. The forge, which once felt familiar and necessary, now felt overwhelming. Standing too long caused pain. Lifting heavy tools strained the back. Yet stopping work was rarely an option. Unlike other roles in medieval society, there was no gentle way to slow down. A blacksmith could not easily step aside and let younger hands take over. The work depended on skill and experience, but it also demanded physical strength. Teaching apprentices helped, but supervision still required long hours near the forge. Even when others did the hammering, the blacksmith remained close to the heat, the noise, and the strain. Retirement, as we understand it today, did not exist. Fear quietly grew alongside physical weakness. A blacksmith's value came from what their body could produce. If strength failed completely, income disappeared. Without steady work, food became uncertain. Dependence on family or community felt uncomfortable, especially for someone used to being relied upon by others. This fear made many continue working long past what their bodies could comfortably handle. Pain was ignored. Rest was delayed. The forge kept burning. Sleep, once already shallow, became more disturbed. Aches made it hard to find a comfortable position. The mind replayed worries about the next day, the next order, the next repair needed by someone else. Even in rest, the body felt tense, as if still holding a hammer. Nights passed slowly. Mornings arrive too soon. As you imagine this stage of life, notice how quiet and heavy it feels. There is no dramatic collapse, just a long endurance that never truly eases. This is another reason why it truly sucked to be a medieval blacksmith. The work did not gently release its grip with age. It held on, demanding effort until the body could give no more. As the night grows calm again, allow this image to soften and drift away. You do not need to hold it. Let your breathing slow. Let your body feel supported where you are now. As the years passed, there came a quiet moment in the life of a medieval blacksmith, when the body no longer obeyed the will in the same way it once had. This moment did not arrive suddenly, and it was not marked by any single injury or dramatic event. Instead, it came slowly, through stiffness that lingered longer each morning, through hands that no longer closed fully, and through shoulders that ached even when resting. The forge still burned, the tools still waited, but the body began to fall behind. Each strike of the hammer required more effort. Each movement demanded more recovery. The work did not slow down, but the body did. Unlike other professions, there was no gentle way to grow old as a blacksmith. The work did not become lighter with age. Iron did not soften out of respect for experience. Fire did not burn cooler for tired hands. The forge asked the same strength every day, no matter how worn the body became. This created a painful imbalance. Experience grew, but strength faded. Knowledge deepened, but endurance disappeared. The blacksmith knew exactly what to do, but the body could no longer do it easily. Pain became a constant companion, not sharp enough to stop work, but heavy enough to color every moment. The hands throbbed long after the hammer was set down. The back tightened during sleep. The smell of smoke and metal seemed to cling to the skin even when resting. Sleep brought little relief because the body could not fully relax. Muscles stayed tense, as if expecting the next blow of the hammer even in the quiet of night. There was no retirement waiting at the end of this road, no savings set aside, no younger generation guaranteed to take over the work. If the blacksmith stopped working, the household stopped earning. Food became uncertain, firewood ran low, debts grew quietly. Because of this, many blacksmiths continued working long past the point when their bodies begged them to stop. Rest was a luxury they could not afford. As strength faded, fear quietly increased. A slipped grip, a missed strike, or a moment of weakness near the fire could cause serious injury. Aging made mistakes more likely, and mistakes at the forge were unforgiving. Burns healed slowly. Cuts lingered. Infections became dangerous. Every day at work carried risk, not because the blacksmith lacked skill, but because the body was no longer reliable. As you imagine this stage of life, notice how quiet and heavy it feels. There is no drama, no complaint, no escape. Just a person standing at the forge, doing their best with a body that has already given everything it had. This is another deep reason why it truly sucked to be a medieval blacksmith. The work did not end when strength ended. It simply became harder. As the night grows quiet now, allow this image to soften and fade. You do not need to hold it. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing slow naturally. Allow rest to continue gently, without effort. As the years passed, the forge did not become easier. For a medieval blacksmith, age did not bring rest or comfort. It brought pain. The same fire that once felt manageable now felt heavier and closer. Arms that once lifted iron with confidence now trembled slightly with each strike. The sound of hammer on metal echoed louder in tired ears, and the heat that once warmed stiff muscles now drained what little strength remained. There was no retirement waiting ahead, no quiet years promised after decades of work. The forge demanded the same effort from an old body as it had from a young one. The body carried marks of this life everywhere. Hands were thick and scarred, fingers stiff from years of gripping hot tools. The back ached constantly, bent from leaning over anvils and lifting heavy metal day after day. Knees felt weak from standing on hard ground for long hours. Sleep brought little relief, because pain followed even into rest. Nights were spent shifting positions, trying to find a moment of comfort that rarely came. Morning arrived too soon, and the cycle began again. Unlike nobles or merchants, a blacksmith could not step away when strength faded. Villages still needed tools. Farmers still needed repairs. Horses still needed shoes. The work never slowed, even as the body did. Younger workers might help, but the responsibility always returned to the experienced hands. Knowledge was valuable, but knowledge alone could not shape iron. The hammer still had to be lifted. The fire still had to be fed. Fear quietly grew with age. A mistake made by a tired hand could cause serious injury. A slip near the fire could burn skin beyond healing. A dropped tool could break fragile bones that no longer healed quickly. Every movement required more care, more thought, more energy. This constant caution added mental exhaustion to physical pain. The forge, once familiar and predictable, slowly became a place of quiet risk. There was also the fear of becoming unnecessary. If strength failed completely, a blacksmith had little to fall back on. There were no savings, no pensions, no safety nets. Dependence on family or community was uncertain. Pride made asking for help difficult, yet the body demanded it more each year. This tension between pride and weakness weighed heavily on the mind. As you imagine this aging blacksmith standing beside the fire, notice how quiet and heavy the moment feels. The forge still glows. The tools still hang on the wall. The work still waits. But the body feels tired in a deep, lasting way. This is another reason why it truly sucked to be a medieval blacksmith. The work did not end when the body needed rest. It continued until strength was fully spent. As the night grows quiet now, allow this image to soften and fade. Let the heat of the forge cool into darkness. Let the sound of hammering drift away. Stay still. Breathe slowly. Allow rest to continue gently, without effort. As the years passed, the strength that once defined a medieval blacksmith slowly began to change its meaning. In youth, strength was survival. It was pride. It was the ability to work long hours, lift heavy iron, and shape metal through heat and force. But as time moved forward, that same strength became something heavier to carry. The body remembered every blow of the hammer, every hour spent standing near the forge, every breath taken in thick smoke and heat. Muscles that were once powerful grew stiff. Joints ached constantly. The hands, once steady and sure, began to tremble slightly, especially in the cold mornings before the fire was lit. There was no retirement for a blacksmith. There was no quiet step away from the forge. The village still needed tools. Horses still needed shoes. Weapons still needed repair. Even when the body asked for rest, the work continued. pain became part of daily life, so familiar that it was rarely spoken about. A blacksmith learned to work through discomfort, through soreness, through exhaustion. Stopping was not an option, because stopping meant no income, no respect, and no place in the rhythm of the village. As strength faded, fear quietly grew. The blacksmith knew that a single mistake could ruin hours of work or cause serious injury. Hot iron did not forgive weak hands or slow reactions. Burns became more common. Small injuries healed slowly. Cuts became infected. The forge that once felt like a place of mastery began to feel dangerous. But even then, the work did not stop. The fire was lit again each morning, and the hammer was lifted once more. This slow physical decline also affected the mind. Pride mixed with frustration. The blacksmith remembered how easily the work once flowed, how the hammer felt like an extension of the body. Now every movement required more effort and more focus. There was a quiet grief in this realization, though it was rarely expressed. Medieval life did not leave much room for talking about feelings. Instead, the blacksmith carried this grief silently, shaping iron by day and feeling the weight of age settle in by night. Sleep, which should have offered recovery, rarely brought full relief. The body ached too deeply. The hands throbbed. The back remained stiff. Even rest was uncomfortable. The forge followed the blacksmith into the night, lingering as warmth in the skin and tension in the muscles. Dreams, when they came, were often simple and repetitive, filled with the sound of hammer on iron, echoing even in rest. As you imagine this stage of life, notice how quiet and heavy it feels. There is no dramatic ending here, no sudden collapse, just a long continuation of work, responsibility, and endurance. This is another reason why it truly sucked to be a medieval blacksmith. The work did not grow easier with time. It only grew heavier, asking more from a body that had already given everything. As the night grows quiet once more, allow this image to soften and fade. You do not need to hold on to it. Let your breathing slow. Let your body rest where it is. The story will continue gently from here. By the time a medieval blacksmith reached the later years of his life, the body was no longer a reliable partner. Decades of standing beside the forge, lifting heavy iron, and striking metal again and again had quietly taken their toll. The hands that once moved with strength and skill now felt stiff and slow. Fingers ached even before the work began, and joints complained with every movement. The back carried a constant pain, deep and familiar, like a shadow that never left. There was no clear moment when this decline started. It arrived slowly, one day at a time, until exhaustion felt normal and comfort felt distant. The heat that once defined the blacksmith's working life had left its mark everywhere. Skin was thickened and scarred from years of sparks and burns. Breathing became harder as smoke and metal dust settled deep in the lungs over time. Even rest did not bring full relief. At night, the body struggled to cool down, and sleep came lightly, broken by discomfort and old injuries that never fully healed. The forge was silent, but its presence remained inside the body, long after the fire itself was gone. There was no real retirement for a medieval blacksmith. Work did not end simply because the body could no longer keep up. Villages still needed tools, repairs, and ironwork, and there were often no younger hands ready to replace the old ones. Even when strength faded, the blacksmith continued working out of necessity. Slower movements replaced strong ones. Tasks took longer. Mistakes became more likely. This created quiet frustration as the mind still remembered how things once were, while the body struggled to follow. Money did not increase with age. Experience brought respect, but it did not always bring comfort. Older blacksmiths often worked just to survive, not to save. There were no guarantees of support if work stopped completely. Illness or injury could quickly become serious not because it was dramatic, but because there was no safety net. Each day of work felt borrowed, taken from a body that had already given everything it had. Emotionally, this stage of life was heavy in a quiet way. Pride and skill remained, but it was mixed with fatigue and worry. The forge had once been a place of purpose. Now it was also a reminder of limits. Watching younger workers move more easily brought mixed feelings, not anger, but awareness. Time had passed. Strength had been spent. The work that once defined life now slowly consumed what remained of it. As you imagine this final phase of a blacksmith's life, notice how calm yet heavy it feels. There is no sudden collapse, no dramatic ending. Just a gradual wearing down, shaped by years of honest, exhausting labor. This is one of the deepest reasons why it truly sucked to be a medieval blacksmith. The craft demanded everything, and in the end, it often left very little behind. As the night grows quieter now, let this image fade gently. Let the forge cool, let the hammer rest. Allow your own body to feel heavy and still, free from effort. Breathe slowly. Rest easily. By the later years of a medieval blacksmith's life, something quiet and heavy settled in that was hard to name. It was not just pain in the hands or stiffness in the back. It was the deep understanding that almost everything the body had was already spent. From a young age, strength had been traded for survival. Heat, smoke, and endless hammering had shaped the body into something useful, but also something worn. The blacksmith rarely reached old age with ease. Even those who survived longer years carried their age heavily, moving slowly, breathing carefully, and resting often, because the body no longer answered the way it once did. The hands told the clearest story. Thick, scarred, and swollen, they had shaped iron for decades, but now struggled with simple tasks. Fingers did not close easily. Joints ached even in warm weather. The hands that once held tools with certainty now trembled slightly, not from fear but from exhaustion that had built up over a lifetime. Each scar carried a memory, though many were forgotten. Pain had become so common that it faded into the background, always present, rarely questioned. The forge itself, once the center of daily life, slowly became harder to face. The heat felt more intense. The smoke lingered longer in the lungs. Standing for long hours became difficult. Younger helpers might take over some tasks, but the blacksmith could never fully step away. The work was not just a job, it was the identity. Letting go of it meant letting go of purpose, and that was something many blacksmiths struggled to do. Unlike nobles or landowners, there was rarely comfort waiting at the end of this long labor. Wealth, if it came at all, was modest. Savings were small. Medical care was almost non-existent. When the body finally began to fail, there was little support beyond family or community kindness. Some blacksmiths continued working far longer than they should have, simply because stopping meant hunger or dependence. Rest was earned late, if it came at all. Emotionally, this stage of life was quiet and reflective. The blacksmith had seen generations pass through the village. Children grow up, houses repaired and rebuilt, tools made for weddings, for farming, for war, and for funerals. Life moved forward, shaped in small ways by the iron he had worked. Yet personal recognition remained limited. The village needed the blacksmith, but rarely celebrated him. Gratitude was practical, not emotional. As the days grew slower, the blacksmith often spent more time watching than working. Sitting near the forge, listening to familiar sounds, feeling warmth on tired bones. There was comfort in routine, even when strength was gone. The forge smelled the same. The village sounded the same. Time seemed to move gently, without urgency now. As you imagine this moment, notice how calm and heavy it feels. A life of usefulness, endurance, and quiet sacrifice, reaching its slow conclusion. This is another reason why it truly sucked to be a medieval blacksmith. The work demanded everything early, and left little behind when the body finally asked for rest. As the night grows quieter now, allow this image to soften and fade. You do not need to hold on to it. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing slow naturally. Allow rest to continue gently, without effort. By the time a medieval blacksmith reached the later years of his life, the body told a long and honest story. Every joint carried the memory of years spent lifting iron, swinging heavy hammers, and standing close to relentless heat. The hands were thick and scarred, shaped by countless hours gripping tools that never truly felt light. Fingers often stiffened in the cold, aching before the day even began. The back bent slightly forward, not from age alone, but from a lifetime of leaning into the forge, working against resistance, gravity, and time itself. The forge remained loud even after decades. The ringing of metal on metal never softened. It echoed through the ears day after day, year after year, until silence itself felt strange. Many blacksmiths slowly lost sharp hearing, not suddenly, but so gently that they barely noticed until voices became distant and quiet conversations hard to follow. The world grew muffled, wrapped in the same dull sound that had filled their working life. Heat was a constant companion, never friendly, never forgiving. Summers were especially difficult. The forge burned hot no matter the season, but in warmer months, the air became heavy and exhausting. Sweat soaked clothing quickly, and rest came only in short pauses. Dehydration and fatigue were common, but work rarely stopped. Orders still needed filling. Tools still needed shaping. Life continued, regardless of comfort. Despite all this hardship, the blacksmith rarely complained. Complaining did not change the work. It did not cool the fire or lighten the hammer. Instead, endurance became a quiet skill, learned slowly over time. Each day was faced as it came, without expectation of ease. There was pride in finishing a piece of work, even if the body paid the price. The finished tool or horseshoe carried silent proof of effort, even when no words were spoken. As the years passed, speed slowed, strength faded slightly. Younger hands sometimes took over the heaviest tasks, but the blacksmith remained close, guiding, correcting, and working when able. There was no true retirement. Skill kept him useful, even as the body weakened. Knowledge was passed quietly, through demonstration rather than explanation. The rhythm of the forge continued, even as individual lives moved closer to their end. When night finally came, rest was deep but heavy. Sleep arrived quickly, pulled by exhaustion, but the body often woke stiff and sore. Dreams, when they came, were simple. Fire, iron, repetition. The mind did not wander far from the forge, because the forge had shaped it completely. As you imagine this long life settling into its final years, notice how calm and steady it feels, even with all its difficulty. This is another reason why it truly sucked to be a medieval blacksmith. Not because of one dramatic hardship, but because the work demanded everything slowly and continuously until there was very little left to give. As the night grows quiet now, allow this image to soften and fade. Let the sound of the hammer grow distant. Let the heat cool. Let your own body remain still and supported, breathing slow, muscles relaxed. Rest continuing gently, without effort. By the later years of a medieval blacksmith's life, the fire was no longer just something in the forge. It lived inside the body as well. Years of standing close to heat, breathing smoke, lifting heavy iron, and repeating the same hard motions every day left marks that could not be erased. The shoulders stayed tight even while resting. The hands, once strong and steady, became stiff and slow. Fingers curled slightly on their own, shaped by decades of gripping tools and hammer handles. Even in sleep, the body remembered the work, holding tension where none was needed anymore. The forge itself did not change with age. It still demanded the same strength, the same focus, the same long hours. Iron did not become lighter just because the blacksmith grew older. Fire did not burn cooler out of respect. Each day began with the same routine: waking early, preparing the forge, checking tools, and stepping into heat that felt harsher with every passing year. There was no option to slow down much. If work slowed, income slowed. If income slowed, food and fuel became uncertain. Rest was a luxury that rarely felt safe to take. Pain became a quiet companion. Not sharp pain that demanded attention, but a deep, dull ache that stayed in the background at all times. The back ached from bending. The knees complained from standing on hard ground. Burns and scars covered the arms, each one a memory of a moment when focus slipped or fatigue took over. These injuries were rarely treated properly. Most were ignored, wrapped quickly, or left to heal on their own. Infection was always a risk, and healing grew slower with age. The heat that once felt familiar now felt overwhelming. Breathing near the forge became harder. Smoke lingered in the lungs. Coughs lasted longer. Some blacksmiths developed breathing problems that never went away. Others lost strength gradually, feeling weaker without fully understanding why. There was no clear explanation, only the sense that the body was wearing down from the inside. Despite all this, the work continued. Villages still needed tools. Horses still needed shoes. Doors still needed hinges. Weapons still needed repair. The blacksmith remained essential, even as his body protested more loudly each year. This created a quiet conflict. The community relied on him, but the cost was paid entirely by his body. There was respect, yes, but respect did not ease pain or shorten the day. Emotionally, this stage of life felt heavy. Younger apprentices might stand nearby, learning the trade strong and quick, unaware of the toll it would take. The older blacksmith watched them with mixed feelings, pride in passing on skills, but also the knowledge of what awaited them. There was no easy warning to give. The work had to be learned through experience. just as it always had been. As evening came, the forge cooled slowly. The fire dimmed. Tools were set down carefully. Hands shook slightly from fatigue. Walking home felt slower than before. Sitting down brought relief, but standing up again was harder. Sleep came more easily from exhaustion, but it was lighter, interrupted by aches and stiff joints. Morning always came too soon. As you imagine this moment, the fire finally quiet, the body heavy and worn, notice how silent this struggle feels. No drama, no reward at the end, just endurance. This is another reason why it truly sucked to be a medieval blacksmith. Not because of one bad day, but because the work followed you for a lifetime, shaping your body, your breath, and your rest until the very end. As the night grows quiet now, let this image fade gently. You do not need to carry its weight. Let your body remain still. Let your breathing soften. Allow rest to come easily, without effort. By this stage in a medieval blacksmith's life, the fire of the forge was no longer just something outside of him. It lived inside his body. Years of standing close to heat, breathing smoke, and working long hours had shaped him from the inside out. Even when the forge was cold, his body remembered the warmth. His skin stayed rough and darkened. His hands remained stiff, thick, and cracked, even during moments of rest. Sleep did not fully remove the feeling of heat. At night, lying on simple bedding, his muscles still felt warm, tight, and restless, as if the hammer were still moving in his hands. The work had changed how the blacksmith felt time. Days were measured not by clocks or bells, but by the rhythm of fire and metal, heat rising, iron glowing, hammer falling, cooling water steaming. This rhythm stayed with him even when he was not working. His breathing followed it. His thoughts followed it. Rest was never complete because the body stayed alert, trained to respond to the forge at any moment. Even silence felt temporary, like the pause between strikes of the hammer. As strength slowly faded with age, the blacksmith did not stop working. He simply worked more slowly. There was no retirement, no moment when the body was allowed to finally rest. Villages still needed tools. Farmers still needed repairs. Weapons still needed shaping. The blacksmith's value came from what his hands could produce, not from how tired those hands felt. Pain became part of the background, like the crackling of fire. It was always there, but rarely spoken about. Illness and injury were constant risks. Burns healed poorly. Cuts became infected. Smoke damaged the lungs over time, making breathing heavier with each passing year. Yet stopping work was rarely an option. Without work, there was no income, no food, and no security. The blacksmith learned to work through pain, through sickness, through exhaustion. The body was pushed far beyond comfort, far beyond recovery, again and again. Emotionally, this created a quiet acceptance rather than anger. The blacksmith did not expect ease from life. Hardship was normal. Comfort felt unfamiliar. Even moments of calm were brief and fragile. When the forge was quiet, the blacksmith often felt uneasy, as if something were missing. The fire had become part of his identity. Without it, he did not fully know who he was. As you imagine this long life shaped by heat and effort, notice how quiet it feels. There is no dramatic ending, no final strike of the hammer, just a slow wearing down, day after day, year after year. This is why it truly sucked to be a medieval blacksmith. Not because of one hard moment, but because the work never truly left the body, even in rest. As the night grows deeper now, allow this image to fade gently. Let the fire cool. Let the hammer fall silent. Let your own body remain still and supported. Breathe slowly. Rest easily. There is nothing you need to carry from this story. By the time a medieval blacksmith reached the later years of his life, the body carried the full weight of every day spent beside the fire. This was not the kind of tiredness that sleep could easily wash away. It was a deep, settled exhaustion that lived in the bones and joints. Hands no longer closed easily in the morning. Fingers felt stiff and slow, shaped permanently by years of gripping hot metal and heavy tools. The back curved forward slightly, not by choice, but by habit, molded by endless hours leaning toward the anvil. Each movement required thought. Each breath carried effort. Pain was no longer something that came and went. It stayed. Knees ached even when standing still. Shoulders burned with a quiet, constant soreness. Small injuries from earlier years, once ignored, now returned as sharp reminders. Burns left scars that tightened the skin. Old cuts stiffened the hands in cold weather. The body did not forget any of it. In a world without real medicine, these pains were not treated. They were endured. Work continued because it had to, not because the body was willing. Even rest did not bring comfort. Sleeping after decades of hard labor was difficult. Lying still made joints throb. Turning over took effort. Nights were often broken by discomfort rather than deep rest. The blacksmith would wake before dawn, not refreshed, but already tired, knowing the fire would need to be lit again soon. There was no retirement waiting, no moment when work simply ended. As long as the body could move, it was expected to work. The mind, too, carried its own quiet weight. Watching younger men take up the hammer brought mixed feelings. There was pride in skill passed on, but also a quiet awareness that strength was fading. The blacksmith knew exactly how the work would shape them, because it had already shaped him. There was no warning to give, no alternative to suggest. This was the life. It always had been. As the body weakened, fear slowly crept in. A blacksmith who could no longer work had little value in a medieval town. Food depended on usefulness. Shelter depended on contribution. If strength failed too quickly, survival became uncertain. This fear kept many working long past what their bodies could safely handle. Pride and necessity mixed together, pushing them back toward the fire even when every muscle protested. The forge itself did not change. The heat stayed the same. The hammer stayed heavy. The anvil stayed unforgiving. Only the body changed, growing slower and more fragile. Mistakes became more likely. A slip of the hand could cause a burn that healed poorly. A moment of weakness could lead to injury that never fully recovered. Each day carried risk, not from drama or violence, but from simple wear and tear. As you imagine this stage of life, notice how quiet it feels. There is no grand ending, no celebration of years spent working, just a slow fading of strength in a world that still demands effort. This is one of the final reasons why it truly sucked to be a medieval blacksmith. The work shaped the body completely and then kept asking more, even when there was nothing left to give. As the night grows still now, Allow this image to soften and drift away. You do not need to hold it. Let your body remain relaxed. Let your breathing slow naturally. Allow rest to continue gently, without effort or expectation. As the long life of a medieval blacksmith slowly came to its end, there was rarely a moment of clear closure. There was no retirement in the way we understand it today, no final day of work marked by rest or reward. Instead, the work simply became slower. The hammer was lifted fewer times. The steps toward the forge were taken more carefully. The fire still burned, but the body standing beside it no longer had the strength it once did. Years of heat, smoke, noise, and strain settled deep into the bones, and the body carried that weight quietly. The hands, once strong and steady, often trembled with age. Burns that had healed long ago still ached when the weather changed. The back remained stiff from decades of bending and lifting. Breathing was slower, shaped by years of smoke and ash. Yet even then, many blacksmiths continued to work as long as they could, not because they wanted to, but because stopping meant having no purpose, no income, and no place to go. The forge was not just a workplace, it was life itself. There were no grand endings. When a blacksmith finally stopped working, it was often because the body no longer allowed it. Sometimes a son or apprentice took over the forge. Sometimes it was sold or abandoned. Sometimes the fire simply went cold. The village moved on quietly. Tools were reused. Iron was reforged. Life continued without pause. The blacksmith, who had shaped so much of daily life, faded into memory without ceremony. Death, when it came, was usually simple and private. There were no songs written about the long hours spent at the anvil, no stories told about the heat endured or the strength given away day after day. The work remained behind in the form of tools, hinges, nails, and horseshoes, used until they wore out and were forgotten. The person who made them was rarely remembered for long. And yet, there was a quiet truth in this ending. The blacksmith's life, though hard and exhausting, had been woven deeply into the world around them. Every door that opened smoothly, every cart that rolled forward, every plow that cut into the soil carried a trace of their effort. Even if their name faded, their work had shaped everyday life in ways few others had. As you rest now, imagine the forge finally cooling. The fire softens into embers. The hammer is set down for the last time. The air grows quiet. The heat fades. What remains is stillness. Let that stillness settle around you. Let the story fade gently into the dark. There is nothing more to do and nowhere else to go. The night is calm now. Your breathing is slow. The fire has gone out. Good night and sleep well.